All right, shalom everyone. Welcome to Beth Meyer. Yes, exactly. Welcome to Beth Meyer. The vast majority of you I recognize, and it's a pleasure to see you. Gemar Chatima Tova, Shana Tova, sweet new year. We welcome all our people who are not official Beth Meyer people, but maybe you're all over the world, over the country, wherever you're at. Thanks for joining us. We're grateful to have you with us. You know, if you feel free to keep joining us for other things in the future. It's a pleasure. You all are in for a treat. Obviously, we're on Yom Kippur, and it's the holiest day of the Jewish year. And when we looked into this year and what's happened this year and what would be enriching during the afternoon break time, because soon we'll be going to Mincha Nila and other study sessions, we said, you know, let us have an opportunity here to learn some of the Torah, and I use that in a sense of wisdom, from people within our own midst that we're blessed to have here at Beth Meyer. So just a reminder before we get started with this panel, I'll tell you a little more, is I want you to make sure they mute themselves. And maybe Kathy, you'll make sure everyone's muted also. Make sure you mute yourself, okay? So maybe feedback. And what will happen here is that the original intent was to have this conversation perhaps live. But after some discussion with our technological leadership here, and including the panel themselves, we decided to record it because we've had too many technological issues and we didn't want to mess this up for Yom Kippur. I want to give them a chance to really offer their wisdom. So we will have this session and we'll discuss it together. Maybe we'll have a little wrap up at the end and see what's possible then. It lasts about an hour. And I think you will be really impressed, I certainly was, with our congregants who are true public servants and leaders who are leading under very challenging circumstances and really teach us about what they've learned, how they've grown, what they know to be true, and how their Jewish identities and Jewish lives intersect with their leadership work. We could not be more grateful to them for their service here in general, but also proud to have them as Beth Meyer members. All right, without further ado, I'm going to now make an attempt to share my screen, and we will begin. Share screen. All right, Kathy, can you see it? Yeah?
Yes. Let's check your sound.
Yeah, let me check the sound. Yes, okay. Okay, Shana Tova, everyone. Shana Tova to our... We're so grateful to have our leadership panel here. And the way my screen is showing in here, we have Sadie. Is it Weiner or Weiner?
Weiner.
I thought so. Okay. Sadie Weiner. We have Dr. Mandy Cohen. And we have Tracy Zimmerman. And we are so grateful to have all of you here, all of you members of Beth Meyer, and all of you public servants. And this is being recorded. This was done for technological reasons and also to make sure it worked. And also to really accommodate your schedules. We are so, so grateful to all of you. First of all, for your service, but second of all, for doing this really to share with us on Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the year. You know, what your Jewish identities, leadership identities as Jewish women leaders in this very difficult time. And we're hoping to hear from each of you about some reflections. And we'll go around a little bit in a circle, let you share, and maybe a little bit of dialogue at the end. Sound kosher, as they say?
That's great.
Also, you don't have to be fasting right now, so you actually can think more clearly. That's probably another benefit.
I'm pregnant. No fasting.
That's right. Sadie.
That's right.
At the right time. That is great. B'sha'ah tova, Sadie. That's perfect. So we'll make you go first, Sadie. Okay. So Sadie Weiner, sorry. Sadie, okay, will you tell us a little what your official position is called and just explain for a layperson what you basically, your job functions?
Sure. Yeah, so I'm Sadie Weiner. I am Communications Director for Governor Roy Cooper. And so what that means is that we have a communications team in the governor's office. We help do everything from run the press briefings that you see on TV when the governor's a part of them, to take incoming questions from reporters, to help draft speeches, talking points, remarks for the governor, but also if there's somebody else who's speaking on the governor's behalf, we'll help out with that. We monitor social media for what's going on and what's being said. We help post to the governor's social media account. So anything you see really that's external being communicated from the governor's office is what our team handles. So that's what I do.
So, and just you oversee like how many people are in your staff, or how many?
We have a team of 8.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're not only directing this, you're managing your team as they respond to these various needs.
Right. Yep. Everybody plays their own part. The press secretary, the deputies, the deputy press secretary. There's all sorts of titles, but everybody knows their role, and we're a pretty well-oiled machine at this point, which always helps.
Okay. Very, very well explained. Thank you so much. Awesome. All right, Tracy Carolina Hurricane Zimmerman, will you tell us what is your official title and what you describe your functions?
So my official title is Senior Director of External Affairs. And so I oversee our Office of Communications that does pretty much many of the same things that Sadie described. But also we have, being a health and human services agency, we do have a lot of public campaigns and messaging around whether it's getting your flu shot, which Secretary Cohen got yesterday. Hope you've got yours. Or the development of our Whatever the Reason campaign and our 3 Ws. It's really helping to position the Secretary and the departments and the governor's priorities for the public, and work very closely with the governor's office and Sadie.
And that includes a recent PSA, right? I think I saw the PSA. You, Tracy, right?
The Whatever, yes, the
Right.
Whatever Your Reason campaign, yes.
That was
came
it.
out
That
of
was
our-
very
yes.
cool. That was very cool. We're very proud. Awesome. Awesome. Fantastic. All right. Dr. Secretary Cohen, tell us about your title and what do you do?
Well, before I jump into mine, let me
sure.
just reflect on both of the women who you just heard from who completely undersold what they do. And, say that, before I was here in North Carolina, I spent 7-8 years in Washington, D.C. and working for the federal level. And they know, the folks who know me well know that I'm a pretty hard grader in terms of talent. And I will say that Tracy and Sadie are two of the most talented communications leaders that I've ever worked with. And they undersell their job because I think they don't share as much about how much of the strategy that they are also it's not just responding and putting things together, but it is really about how do we talk about these things and how do we build trust with the public, how do we explain hard concepts, how do we make sure that folks are understanding what's going on during these hard times. And particularly when in this era of so much misinformation and who do you believe, and like building that trust is so real important. And so, I mean, they're just phenomenal at their jobs. They can see around corners and problems before they happen, which is really hard to do. And they're just fantastic at their job. So I just wanted to make sure everyone knew that. And I will say that 3 of us work together very, very closely, particularly in 2020. So we're constantly talking about how to, continue to improve. But all the words that you see come out of the governor's mouth and my mouth are written at one time or another by Tracy or Sadie. So we are very, very closely coordinated, and they're phenomenal writers, strategic thinkers, and incredible leaders, which is what we need at this really hard time. So I just wanted to, they undersold a little bit, in addition to, executing the work, which is also really important, and managing large teams. And Tracy in particular, I brought her to the department prior to COVID from her work in early childhood, which she was a leader in that, but I don't think any of us realized that we were signing up for a pandemic. But I want to thank Tracy in particular for joining our department, and she's just been so awesome. So, okay.
That's awesome. We're felling together. That's great.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So now you know why Mandy is such a good leader, because she didn't talk about herself at all.
We're
She
getting
inspired
there.
everyone else.
It's true. It's an awesome statement. Okay.
So-
Moses was humble too. Okay, Mandy, but
Okay.
your
All right.
title.
Well, so folks see a lot of my role on TV, obviously, and that I'm doing a lot of this right now. My job is, spokesperson duty for COVID-19,
Right.
but I also lead a very large department at Health and Human Services. We're the largest insurer in the state, and Medicaid, we insure 1 in 5 people in the state. We obviously oversee public health, mental health, but also economic services, child protective services, adult protective services, and early childhood education. I'm leaving things out, but it's 18,000 people, a $20 billion a year budget. So it's both a strategic and communications role that you sort of see on TV, but I think the things you don't see are running a big organization behind the scene. Obviously, I have a huge team, Tracy amongst them, that helps us do all of that successfully, but it's an honor to serve, and I think a real opportunity to have all of those levers and different kinds of programs that are all meant to help the people of North Carolina in different ways. It's awesome to have them under this one umbrella. It does make us work more closely together as a team, all those different things. In different states, sometimes they're scattered into different departments and organizations, and this has really allowed us to be one team in trying to help North Carolina. I think that's been an asset for us this year in 2020 that's been so challenging in particular.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Cohen. Okay. So today we're definitely going to talk about, the title was Leadership in a Time of Crisis. And as noted, we are living in one. And then also, obviously, the rabbi part, Yom Kippur part, some Jewish questions too. But why don't we just start with continuing this issues, because we've just introduced yourselves and talked about your work. Why don't we talk a little bit about how each of you chose to get into public service? I mean, with your skill sets, you could have, and some of you I think have, and other times, Tracy, I know have worked in different parts of of the economy, but you've chosen public service. So I don't know, why don't we start with Dr. Cohen first, and we'll go back around the other way. So why did you choose public service? What got you excited, or how'd you get, can you summarize it?
Yeah, so it starts back, everything's formidable when you're a kid and your family, and we were a very advocacy-oriented family, right? I remember going to rallies about Israel and rallies about world hunger, right? We were kind of a rallying family. We liked to rally for things that we cared about. And what it was is that we felt like our voice needed to be heard, and that change needed to happen. I think we as an immigrant family felt connected to building a stronger nation. And my parents always said, you could do whatever you want, and make sure that you are charging to make the world a better place. And I always saw government as a force to make change possible and for good. I spent time even in college working in Washington, D.C. on Capitol Hill, my first taste of this mix of policy. And I thought about bringing together my clinical background as a physician to this world of policy. And at the time that was kind of an odd thing, but now it's actually getting more common, which is good because we need more, I think, doctors in leadership roles in policy. So, but it really started with feeling like government can do hard things and be a force for good and change. But we all have a role to play in building this better and stronger world. And I think particularly coming to the United States for opportunity, we felt that we wanted to be part of shaping that better world for the future.
Are you saying your parents are immigrants or grandparents?
Grandparents. My parents both born here. My parents, Russia, Poland, Germany, Austria.
The classics.
Good.
Right.
Yeah.
No, beautiful.
Okay.
No, maybe we'll get back into it later about the immigrant story. It's very powerful, and obviously a lot of us identify with that. Thank you for sharing. All right, Tracy, how about you?
It's really hard. I'm not sure I can pinpoint a given moment. My parents gave me many, many things, but we didn't grow up necessarily going to rallies and doing that sort of thing. I knew early on, though, that I wanted to do something that in some way gave back. So while this is my first government job, and it's been quite a learning experience, all of my career has been spent in sort of issue advocacy work. And I've been reflecting on this a lot since you posed it ahead of time. I think it does have something to do with sort of not Jewish identity in the sense of something I learned in Hebrew school, but I think in the sense of Jewish experience and knowing that learning early on, your focus on, we were a persecuted people, we suffered, and thinking, what is my role in preventing that for others? And so I think that's always been somewhere subconsciously at the core of what has motivated me, and also recognizing how fortunate I was to be born where I was in the time that I was with the parents I had. And there feels like some amount of luck of the draw as to, I could have been born anywhere. And so those are blessings that should be shared and opportunities that everyone should benefit from.
That's awesome, Tracy. Thank you. It's awesome. All right, Sadie, how about you? What do you say?
Yeah, I had reflected on this too, and I feel like my answer is like actually a perfect blend of what Mandy and Tracy said. So I've worked both in public, the government side. I've also worked on campaigns, which is sort of a different way I've expressed my public service through a very particular partisan lens. But this is sort of really all I've ever known. And I think that growing up, my parents, especially my dad, there was always a focus at the dinner table on whatever was in the news and talking about it and explaining it and understanding it. And so I guess at a certain point, there was sort of this realization that, I had a set of beliefs, and I realized, oh, there's a way that I can have a small part in influencing this conversation that people are having by trying to promote what it is I think will help our world be better. And I think a lot of those beliefs, if I think about where they come from, were influenced by my family's immigrant story, and sort of the Jewish identity of Tikkun Olam and all the different pieces there. But it was sort of all of that. It just kind of clicked one day that I could actually play a role in this.
It's beautiful, Sadie. And also, isn't your mother is she immigrated? Isn't that right? Or
No, three of my 4 grandparents did. Yeah.
3 or 4 grandparents. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Wow, very touching. Beautiful. Awesome. All right, let's go now. We'll give Tracy the hot seat first. So you all are leading in a pandemic, unexpected. And also I want to say, I have Rabbi Jenny in my ear here. I hope that you also will bring in some aspects of what it means to be a woman leader, if it has made a difference or been relevant to your experiences here in the pandemic crisis and in general. So please feel free to bring that forward to which you feel is relevant. But we'll start with you, Tracy. You jumped in. It sounds like Mandy brought you up and then didn't expect us to start. I guess you started some months before the COVID started. Okay. And you came in with one agenda and then it must have switched, I assume. What the question I kind of posed to all of our panelists was, what would you say is something you've learned about leading in crisis, both, and also something you've learned and something maybe we in the public are not aware of, the ones who receive, the citizens are not aware that maybe I said, what would you like us to know about what it's like to lead in this challenging time?
Yeah, it's such a good question. I think what I'd like people to know and what I've witnessed is how hard people are working on behalf of the people of North Carolina, how much dedication, passion, brilliance, smart. There's no way to see all of that, but I see it, and I people, not sleep. They're so committed, and I think it's really important for people to know that. I also, working for Mandy and watching the governor, I hope that North Carolinians also know how fortunate they are to have the leadership we have. Mandy, she was going on about us, but she's definitely, if not the smartest, one of the smartest people I've ever encountered, in that she is in every way strategic and thoughtful and really leads with transparency. And I continue to learn from her about from her previous experiences and what she brings to this about it may not always, we don't know everything, and we have to be transparent in saying what we don't know. And the governor as well, watching him lead from a place of what is best for our residents is really awe-inspiring, and just is what motivates me to get out of bed really every day. So I guess I've learned and been reminded of, particularly in a time that there's a lot to look out upon and have a lot of cynicism about. We have genuine, smart, dedicated leaders certainly in our secretary and our governor, who really lead from the heart and the brain, both the heart and the mind, to do what's best. And that is really their primary focus.
That's awesome. Okay, Dr. Cohen, we'll go next to you next. What do you say? you signed up for and learned, and what we need to know.
Yeah, so I have always been a very values-driven leader. We have values at our department that I talk about almost on a daily basis whenever we talk about, but there's a few in particular that rise to the top as we try to respond to this crisis. And Tracy hit on one of them, is transparency, and I talk about it with my team probably every day. Because I think in hard times like this, folks need to not just hear what you want them to do, but the why, and that transparency of your thinking. How did I get to a decision, this needs to be closed or that needs to be open? Here's how I did it. I looked at this data. Let me show you where the line goes up or down, right? And that's really important, but and to say we don't always have all the answers, as Tracy said. So transparency is really important, and I need that from my team too, because in order for me to be a good job about sharing accurate information, I need my team to make sure that they are sharing and being transparent. And the other is the second is communication, right? And that's what you see. The governor and I in front of news cameras a lot, because during a crisis you need to really be communicating a lot and repetitively. So you have to know the things like the 3 W's and get behind the masks and all of those things, because we're asking folks to change the way in which they move through the world. That's huge. It's really hard to change behavior, and it does take a fair amount of communication. And the last thing that I think is important about leadership in this moment is not just having a vision of where we should go, but actually being in the details of making it happen. Like being in the operational execution, those details matter. So making sure that not just we should have testing, sure, that's an easy thing to say, but like having testing show up with no barriers for people who have a lot of challenges in their life is really hard and important, right? So testing as an example, making sure not just that we have testing available, but we have it in communities that don't have testing access or are not insured or have challenges related to transportation and all the things. So how do we really match the details with the vision? And so I think those are really important, because you can have a lot of good leaders with great ideas, but unless that leader is focused on making those ideas actually happen in reality and meeting people where they are, I don't think you can ultimately be successful as a leader. So I think you need to focus on both.
Wonderful. Wow, amazing. And followed through. All right, Sadie, how about you? What would you say?
Yeah, so I also feel very fortunate to be able to watch the governor's leadership and watch Mandy's leadership and sort of how they combine. And, I think a lot about how the governor, part of his leadership was, long before anyone knew anything this pandemic would happen, was setting himself up to be successful no matter what the crisis was. And so that meant putting leaders like Mandy in positions of power, because he could not have predicted this. No one did. But we're so lucky that he had brought in somebody who cares about the data, the science, who is an expert in, her own right, and who in turn surrounded herself with the right experts and the people who needed to be around her. That a lot of leadership happens before the crisis, and making sure that your systems are running and that your people around you are good. The other thing that I've thought a lot about, it was more so at the beginning, March and April and some into May. I've dealt with a fair amount of communications crises, like real crisis moments in my career in various jobs. And the first sort of rule of crisis communications is that you want to get all of the facts, all right? Like you don't want to really do anything or make any strategic decisions until you know all the facts. And, we had Mandy and these other doctors and these great, very smart people telling us minute to minute what they knew, but it was changing for everybody. Right. And so there was sort of this, it felt really hard to figure out how do we communicate. And I think Mandy's point about transparency, or maybe it was Tracy, saying what we do and we don't know and just being really honest about that was important. But I also think that from a communications perspective, not talking about decisions on opening and closing, I had to really hone back into trusting my instinct and saying, look, this might change. So how do we say this in a way that people will still trust us if it changes, and understand that it's changing sort of outside of our control. And so I think we were pretty successful in that, in terms of helping people know what they needed to know, and really quickly when we needed to, saying, okay, now we know this, and so now this is the most important thing. And that was hard.
Yeah, so that's actually, I was just going to double check. So we'd say you're saying one of the hardest things is the changing information, how you have to communicate that, and maybe, I mean, I'm putting words in your mouth, but, because there's kind of a gotcha culture where, like, you said one thing in X and here's the videotape and here's Y, and you're saying, wait a second, it was changing information, not that I'm necessarily not being transparent, in the words of our other. Is that what you're kind of saying, Sadie?
Right, yeah, exactly. And, the governor, you'll hear him say it, dozens of times during each of his press conferences, we're relying on the data and the science.
Right.
He wants the experts who know about virus, who know about transmission, who know about this disease, to inform the decisions that he ultimately has to sign off on in the executive order. He's not just going to sit there picking willy-nilly. And so, how do you keep in that science and data when you are nervous that it could change? And we've seen it change a lot less, I would say. I mean, Mandy can speak to this. Since we sort of figured things out, I don't worry as much about the whiplash back and forth. We know more now.
So maybe just to go to Tracy and maybe one more, just trying to hear about like the most difficult part of the work, or is something else you want us to add to that? I mean, you've already talked a little bit about it, how you have to want to be transparent, you want to communicate things well, and it's not always known. But is there anything else you want to add to that in terms of what's challenging?
Well, I think a theme that I think really links between the work that we're doing and other conversations that I bet we'll have about Judaism is about trust. You heard Tracy say it, and trust is really important. And I think the hardest part is particularly when you have a polarized, partisan sort of dialogue, because it's an election year, and things can be very challenging in that space. In figuring out how you can talk and sort of cut through that noise to build trust in a changing environment and polarize things, and rightly, when folks are speaking up about injustices in the world, right? How do you maintain trust across all of the people of North Carolina? And that is enormously challenging. And I think about it all the time, because because it is an incredibly precious commodity, I think, in terms of being able to be successful to beat back a pandemic, like maintaining trust. But it is, and I think it overlaps with, I think, what we'll talk about related to Judaism. And you think about faith and trust, and how do you maintain that in an ever-changing environment and the kinds of things we're being asked to do.
I just want to add, I think part of what you hear about in the trust is also the internal trust. And I think one of the underlying themes of what both Sadie was saying and Mandy is that amongst us, we have trust in one another, and the collaboration that happens. Sadie is so welcoming to collaborate all of the time on what we're doing, and both ways, and provides great insights. And so I think that's the other piece that, and I don't, Rabbi Jenny asked about women. I can't say if that's a
wasn't just her,
a gender thing or not, but there's a lot of, I think, really authentic collaboration that happens as well.
Yeah, so let me just go another round with that. So as women leaders, can you talk a little bit about what, I mean, you have multiple identities. We all have multiple identities we're carrying with us. As women leaders, have you particular challenges, or perhaps not challenge? I don't know. North Carolina, all of you've been, well, Tracy, I think, has been the longest in North Carolina in this group, I think. At least I've known you the longest. So. Right, it's certainly Beth Meyer. How has that played itself out? Is there anything particularly like to comment on that? I'd love to hear. Anyone have a specific? Yeah, Tracy.
I don't know if I've had a very positive experience, especially, again, this is kind of where your leadership matters, that the governor wants everyone's voices at the table, man, woman, black, white, brown, whatever, he wants that perspective. And so.
Uh-oh, she froze, but I can keep going.
Okay.
Or Tracy, unless you want to jump in.
Maybe I'll tell
Well, what I was going to say is actually, if anyone, you're the one who is in front of the camera all the time. And so I imagine that you experience it in ways that Sadie and I do not.
Well, I think, let me talk about where I think women leadership in this moment is really important. One, I think women are, can be better listeners. And I think listening is part of communication and building trust as well. I think that I can empathize differently as a mom with what a lot of folks are going through. So I think, and I bring that up, and I will talk about my kids and the challenges that we are having as a family to help folks understand that I'm going through it too with them in a different way. And I think women, play like can show more empathy often. And I think you need to at this time. This is really hard. And even when I'm trying to help everyone know the answers, I want them to know that God, this is so hard. And so I think that's important. But on the other side of being a woman leader in the South, right? I do think that there was a period of time where you certainly have to prove yourself, as opposed to potentially if you're starting the other gender, you're sort of given that's a given, and if you lose it, then then that's fine. But as a woman, you have to sort of build up to the I trust you as a leader place. But I think that. That's something that is not a problem to overcome once you're able to sort of start doing your work. But I still think that there is plenty of boys club culture that you need to be aware of. But I also have always told, and I tell this to my mentees and people, be authentic and be you and play to your strengths. And I think some of my strengths are the fact that I am a woman and I am a mom, and that I am still younger in my career. And, those are authentically me. They're a strength and they can be a weakness. And it's a matter of how do you use that. And I think it's also important that, that you build for your weaknesses. So there are times when I know that my voice is not the voice that everyone would want to hear from, and then we have to use other messengers at different times to make sure that we are leading effectively. Also, knowing when to step back is also an important part of being a leader as well.
So just to understand, you're basically saying there are times that you, as the secretary, think, well, there's someone else on my staff or on my team that might be of a different gender, different whatever makeup that's going to convey more effectively. Whether you like that or not, or think that's fair, is a different question. But that's just effectiveness is kind of the standard, I guess.
That's right. If my measure of success is to be effective, that doesn't mean I have to own all of the things all the time. So, and sometimes there are different folks who need to be more effective. But look, I've also had the opportunity to work for some incredible women leaders. When I worked at the federal level at, healthcare, and there was just a recent article on this, very dominated by a lot of women, particularly on the government side. So I had the opportunity to learn from those fantastic women leaders. But honestly, the people who have been the most supportive of me and my closest mentors are all men. And I think it really does take men to be that kind of supportive mentors and leaders to help women be successful in their careers. So I really appreciate both the men who have been supportive of women leaders, but also watching other incredible women leaders as well.
So I felt badly. We felt badly that
That's okay.
You were right in the middle. Do you want to just finish? Do you remember where we finished?
I was just going to say, any woman in the working world will tell you that you probably have to work twice as hard to go the same distance as a man, even if you're in the most supportive environment. So that's what I was going to say. I'm at my parents' house with the worst internet in America.
We're grateful you're here. We're really grateful you're here. We're proud. Okay, Tracy, what would you say?
I think I already answered, so tell me again.
Sorry.
I don't think I have anything to add.
Maybe we went around already. I want to make sure everyone's included. Trying to be inclusive. That's it. Forgive me. Okay, Yom Kippur, forgive me. All right, perfect time. Let's now dig in a little deeper into your Jewish backgrounds into this, and like even like maybe a little bit what Yom Kippur means to you guys a little bit, and maybe even the context of this. So I asked each of this ahead of time to our listeners. I had asked for just maybe one or two experiences Jewishly that were formative. You know, each of you have been a different number of years. I mean, again, Tracy's our veteran at Beth Meyer, but you've all been involved in Jewish life in different ways. You know, we've been so blessed. We are so proud to have you all as part of Beth Meyer. It's like tremendous nachas. Like every time we see one of you in various ways and we follow you, I follow you all on Twitter and all that stuff. Jenny actually grew up in Dallas, not far from where Sadie's from. It's like another connection. So it's wonderful. So I just would be curious. So someone's already mentioned about like Immigration Story, rallies. I'm sure synagogue life we're going to hear about here, you know, and how great Beth Meyer's been, you know, that's also no problem. I don't mind hearing. But I'd be curious to hear maybe one or two experiences that were really formative for you in your Jewish experience. And then maybe what it's like to lead as a Jewish leader too in this moment. Has that had any role or not in this moment? So how about this time I'll go Tracy first. Tracy,
Okay, so formative experiences. I'm going to share two that are very opposite of one another. So when I think I said earlier about experience and the Jewish experience over centuries, I remember being very young and with my family going to a restaurant in Western Maryland. I can't remember exactly where, Rabbi, or I know you know the area.
Our stomping grounds.
Yeah. But in the western part of the state, and my uncle wearing a Jewish star, and that even though the restaurant was like mostly empty, they couldn't seat us. And I don't know the conversation that actually took place because I was young, but I know that the after conversation was around that, and It clearly has stuck with me all these years. It was very formative and sort of place in the world and people's, you know, any kind of sort of injustice in that way. On the flip side, I would say, to me, Judaism is family, and it's all those experiences. And as long as I can remember, it's actually Passover is my favorite holiday because it's when all of our family got together, extended family, and it was just joy and food and everything. And so it is always, those things have been very intertwined for me. In terms of the moment, I'm curious to hear what Mandy and Sadie have to say because it's such a part of who I am. I don't know how it comes out. I know that I'm really happy every time I look on TV or see the picture of Mandy when you walk in and there's the giant chai right there. That makes me very proud.
Amen, amen, amen. And I'm also realizing, Tracy, like Passover's favorite holiday makes sense based on something you shared earlier about the story of you feel blessed based on the fact that you remember from where we come. You know, it's awesome. All right, here we'll go to Mandy next, then Sadie. Mandy, what do you say about these formative experiences?
Yeah, so folks have heard me talk about, and everyone sees that it's a very visual part of my Judaism is wearing the chai, and so for you know, it is very much part of my identity. So my mom gave me the chai when I got into medical school. And for me, actually, she gave it to me and talked about how when she was growing up, nursing school was the option for her. Her older brother went to medical school. But no one told her she couldn't go to medical school, but no one encouraged her to do it. And she thought nursing, and she went to nursing school. She was a nurse practitioner. She took her career and she's an amazing clinician. But the same opportunities weren't there for her. And watching her daughter be able to go to medical school was just an incredible moment of strength as a woman, right? That she could have her daughter do this. And so I think it was important that she gave me a chai and not a Jewish star. I think that was a really great, because traditionally women will wear a Jewish star, or at least in my circle, I guess, growing up, and men would wear the chai. And she was like, I'm going to give you the chai as a strength, right? Take this as the strength that you can do anything, man or woman. Take this Jewish identity with you and hold it close to you. And so it's always been a part of me. But I'll be honest that it really wasn't until I took this role, and frankly, when I had never lived in a place that there weren't a lot of Jews before I came to North Carolina. And it was the first time that I had to even think about, should I wear this Jewish symbol? And it was the first thing I did was have a portrait done, which is when you join the cabinet, and I had to have a discussion, should I do that? And it was absolutely like, of course I'm going to, this is me. And to the point, the governor hired all of me, the woman, the doctor, the Jew, the mom. And so that was very important to me. And it's really spurred a lot of important conversations with my staff, with stakeholders that I thought were really important, some of whom had never met someone who was Jewish before. So that has been great. And I'll say I've only gotten positive responses from it. And during this time of 2020, when I am having this slightly more visible role, I hear from a lot of other Jewish women to say, you know what, I hadn't worn my Jewish star or my chai. And now I see you doing it, and it inspires me to do that as well. And so if I'm helping someone also feel confident to connect with their Jewish identity, like, what a blessing.
Diane, that's awesome. Awesome. You know, just something what you're sharing here is also kind of in honor of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I was realizing as we're talking about this too. May she rest in peace. Kind of unbelievable. Okay. Sadie, please, Bakasha, what would you say?
Well, first of all, Mandy, I never thought about it, but I had a Jewish star, but my dad always wore the chai. I didn't even put that together. But I appreciate that. I'm going to go chai shopping after this.
Yay.
Rabbi Eric mentioned that Rabbi Jenny and I both grew up in Dallas, and we actually went to the same small private school here in Dallas that is 30 to 40% Jewish. So even though I grew up in a place where you don't really think of there being a lot of Jews, I never, my Jewish identity was never lacking growing up. I went to Hebrew school, I had a bat mitzvah, I had plenty of Jewish friends, enough that I didn't even feel like I needed to do BBYO, because I was I'm pretty Jewish here. This is a good thing, we're good here. And then I went to the University of Texas and I joined AE5, which is, I think the UT chapter was the only one left in the nation that was 100% Jewish. Every single woman in our chapter was Jewish. And so I always just sort of had that around me, even though I wasn't in, New York or New Jersey or wherever. And I remember I had two experiences. I'll tell the short stories. When I was working for Senator Kay Hagan from North Carolina, may she rest in peace. Also, I picture her up there chatting with Ruth now in heaven or whatever. I was working in DC in her office, and I got into a Capitol elevator, and they have these elevator operators. And he said, what senator do you work for? And I said, I work for the senator from North Carolina. And he said, oh, interesting. Is that where you're from? And I said, no, I'm actually from Texas. And he said, oh, huh. And he had this puzzled look on his face. And I said, why? And he said, oh, I don't know. I would have guessed New Jersey or New York. And I was like, why? And he was like, oh, you just have that look about you. And it was nothing in my life had ever happened like that. And I got out of the elevator and it hit me all of a sudden. I was like, oh, I'm wearing my Judaism on my face. I look totally Jewish. Wow, that was I guess we call it a microaggression now. Right. And it was I didn't feel threatened, but I was oh, you're making me feel different for something that's just who I am. The other story, I was working for Senator Hagan still, and I was traveling around the state with her, and we went to, we were in Wilkes County, North Carolina, so kind of the foothills. And we were at this, I think it was a rec center, and Kay was having open office hours where she just kind of meets with constituents. And I had a Jewish star on, and this woman came up to me. And when we travel with the senator, you don't travel with security when you're with the governor. You just I would just show up at events, and it's me and Kay Hagan just rolling in. And this woman came up to me and she saw my Jewish star and she said, oh, are you Jewish? And I had this panic moment where I was oh my gosh, am I in a safe place? I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say. And I said, yes. And she goes, oh, I love the Jewish people and I love Israel. And it was very positive. And I was oh, thank God. But I had this moment where I was I don't know what I'm going to even do or say if somebody were to, say something negative right now. But, all that's to say that obviously I've had this sort of very strong Jewish identity my whole life. And I think that becoming a mom in 2018 My husband is also Jewish, and there was no question that we would raise our children Jewish, but making each of those conscious decisions about how to raise another Jewish person has made me feel even more strongly connected. So like, yes, he'll have a bris, and yes, he's going to go to Beth Meyer preschool, like the second he's old enough to, and they'll let him in the door. And yes,
good advertisement. We're going to put this a recording on it.
We'll light Shabbat candles every week, which now I'm very proud because Benny's newest word that he can say is kippah, which we taught him watching Rosh Hashanah services because he loves hats. So we were like, this is a hat. But yeah, so I think that's sort of deepened my connection in a new way that I wasn't even expecting.
Amazing. Wow, what amazing stories. What really remarkable stories. Tov, so I guess the last real question I had for you all, and we're going to give a chance for anything else you want to add, was really kind of like actually, the question I asked was what you wish for, like what would be your prayer in the new year, for well, first of all, to Beth Meyer. You're talking to Beth Meyer, basically. But really, there are others that are going to watch this video. Like, we have it open on our YouTube. So, others will be listening to North Carolina, maybe even to our nation, perhaps. And I'd be curious what your hopes are, what your wishes are. I also want to say something I think it's Tracy mentioned before, maybe the communications aspect. All of you have talked about it. You're telling people often either bad news or ambivalent news. I mean, I'm not saying there's no good news. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying, you have to say things that not everyone wants. Like, I guess what Mandy was saying before, like you're telling people consistently, repeating behaviors they may not want it. This is not what anyone wanted. So you're having to communicate and do things. It's not like you're celebrating, 10 years of a rising economy and the unemployment rate is 0 and, and nobody's sick. It's a lot of complex information, or negative information. That's going to take a toll on, you as you mentioned, you're all parents, you're going home, your children, some of them are old enough to either be in college or be in school, they have to be home. It's got to be hard, and you have to work in an environment where there's negative, I want to say negative is the right word. It's hard on the heart. It's hard on the neshama. It can be hard on the soul. So I'm just wondering, how do you deal with that? Like when it's hard? I mean, clearly I think I have supportive partners. And you have a congregation that stands behind you 1,000%. But is there something you go to help you in this moment? Maybe in addition to maybe knowing the Jewish journeys in the past, but something that you go to help you when you're in a place of like, wow, this is just so much to handle personally and professionally. Is there anything you want to add on that? Any of you? Let me know.
Well, I'll start. And as I was sitting also reflecting about being a woman leader, I was remiss in not recognizing that I couldn't do what I do, and I'll just say for me, without my husband, without Sam. And he is the person who helps me get through when my soul feels crushed, which it does, like every normal person. When I'm like, I'm so tired, not even physically, just weary, tired, like I can't do more. He helps absorb some of that with me. And is such a source of strength for me, because not only is he supporting me like emotionally, but intellectually as well, like helping me think through hard problems, giving me space to when I need it at home. So he's with the kids and taking on so much at home. And I think that plays so much into being a woman leader, is having a partner in your life that supports you in that holistic way. And I'm thinking of Marty Ginsburg and like what an incredible husband he was to Ruth, and supported and loved her. And I was reading an article about him, and I see so much of my husband so similarly in that, where could not be more proud of the work I'm doing, but also is so much a part of it at the same time, right? Because he is the one who helps me make sure my soul does not get crushed. And whether it's a hug or an hour of alone time, both are important, and both help me get through. And he's been just awesome. So everyone give Sam Sam a shout out when you see him, because he's so awesome, and I am so lucky. And like that's part of being able to excel in your career as a woman, is having a partner that wants to be that true partner with you.
Amen. He's in your corner. Good soccer player too.
That's it.
Sadie or Tracy, how do you all, either one of you want to go first? You want to feel called?
I guess that sort of goes in hand with the wish or the blessing that I would have. You know, some of the days are really hard, and I think working in kind of like a values-driven job like we are, it can help at the end of a hard day to know I'm doing this for a reason, and what we're doing is important, even if it's hard. It's literally, there are lives on the line in this case. And, you know, I try not to minimize, you know, oh, I feel so tired, or it's so hard to have a little kid at home while we're doing this and all the craziness going on in the house and whatever. But, you know, one of the things we do every Shabbat is we'd say where we were a week ago, but we also take a minute to think about who we need to be thinking about, which is just sort of a way to kind of express. We talked about our one up for the week, just different expressions of gratitude. And I think kind of what Tracy talked about, just that random lottery of birth and the incredible privilege that I have to be able to work from home when we're not doing press briefings, and to, you know, not worry about how the bills are going to get paid. I feel like my hope for anybody out there who finds himself in that same position of privilege is to use it somehow and to not forget it. And it's okay to feel beat down, you know, every day if you need to, because things are hard for everybody right now. But what are the ways that you can use that privilege to help the people who don't have it right now? And maybe that just means wearing a mask so that it's safer for the grocery workers out there who have to go into work, or the sanitation workers, or whoever it might be. Or maybe it's something deeper and more involved, or maybe it's money, maybe it's time, who knows, but find the way.
It's awesome, Tracy. Thank you so much for beautiful. Yeah, Tracy.
Yeah, so mine's, I think, a combination. I am so blessed to have a husband who's always supported my career. And, you know, the joke is dinner is on the table when I get home, and how lucky am I for that, right? Like, he's always he's amazing. And when I'm not going to lie, I'm exhausted. I'm being real about that. And he'll be the first, like, to see me at night and be like, call and make we're going to the beach this weekend. You can work from the beach. So, like, having that kind of support is so important, and patience, right? Because it is hard, and they are doing more at home. My kids are older, and I can't even imagine the things that, like, the extra things that Sadie and Mandy have to also manage. And then, yes, I'm exhausted, but we do have incredible privilege. And I do strongly believe it is our duty, it's our obligation to take that privilege and give it to others, and to make the world a better place. So I was thinking a lot about the prayer, and really I kept coming back to, it's the prayer we say all the time, which is, I pray for healing of body, spirit, and mind.
Amen.
We need that.
Amen. 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 So, Mandy, do you want to add something? Did I get you yet? I don't want to make a mistake again. Did I catch you already? Did everyone get a chance? Okay. So then, last thing. This is gonna be on Yom Kippur. What do you think you'll be thinking on Yom Kippur? Is there a certain thing you'll be praying for on Yom Kippur? Is it the healing, would you say, is the number one thing? What would you say is there anything specific you're going to be focusing on as Yom Kippur? Obviously, some of it might be personal. Don't have to share anything personal. Everyone's working on their personal. So that's what I mean. I meant more for the world. Anyone want to say anything? Or what Yom Kippur means to you?
Well, I'll start. I mean, I have the humility of knowing that I am sure there are things we aren't getting right in the moment, and that with reflection, we'll say, wouldn't I have done this or that? And I'll never, I will always say we should not Monday morning quarterback a crisis. But we hold ourselves to very high standards of excellence, and there's always room for improvement there. And so I want to do best for the people of North Carolina, and I'm always in that self-evaluation. So there's that. Mm. I will also be reflecting on the injustices in the world, and I will say that as much as I thought I understood them even before this year, I understand them in a different way now. And I think that's a good thing, but it also makes me reflect that I have not done enough as an ally, and to use my privilege is I think a really good word in enough ways. So I think I have learned a lot through this year with having good conversations with people on my team and new friends in my life about the challenges, like Sadie was talking about. Oh, I wear my Judaism on my face, and we're lucky, and often our skin is still white. And like, what does that mean for those who wear that on their skin all the time? And I think as I continue in this role and through this year, that has weighed on me more. And it's a failing of my own to say, like, I know I have not done enough. And what more can I do in that space? So that is something I think about for this year. And that look, and I am praying for a world where we can see each other with more love and more sense that we are all human at the core of things, and like, how do we get back to some of that, as opposed to the very divisive and place where I feel like we are, it feels very hurtful. So that's what I'll be thinking about on Yom Kippur.
It's beautiful. Yom Kippur.
I'm going to take us. Oh, you go, Sadie.
No, you say, Tracy.
Are you sure?
It's hard on Zoom. I know it's hard to see. Go ahead, Tracy. Go first.
Well, Mandy started by like bragging on all of us, and there are a couple of things that have come together that I think tie Judaism and many of the questions. So Judaism is about action, right? It's not just about thought. And Mandy just said she had better understanding. What she hasn't told you is the work this brings tears to my eyes, because she has led a process. I feel confident we are the only state leading in such a strong way to make sure that we are meeting and addressing and not getting it all right and perfect, but leading with our historically marginalized populations, leading with how do we make sure our Latinx and Hispanic and our Black and African American communities who are so disproportionate, because Mandy has set up a structure and a call that is exactly how we're going to respond. We'll keep learning, we'll keep doing it better, but she has put that in motion, and it's an incredibly powerful thing to be part of. So she's not just understanding, she's really acting.
That's awesome, Tracy. Thank you. Then Sadie, Bakasha?
Yeah. So ditto amen to everything Mandy and Tracy have said, especially really reflecting and doing those really hard conversations with yourself sometimes about what more should I be doing? It's an urgent issue. My dad has this is a different topic. My dad has this phrase. I'm going to say it slowly, make sure I get it right. He says, our capacity for misunderstanding is exceeded only by our willingness to assume the worst on the part of others. And so I think that personally, and I hope this can extend to other people too, finding ways that we can really extend each other a lot of grace right now and be really understanding, and just know, we don't know what people are going through. And, there's a great David Foster Wallace commencement speech that anyone should go watch the YouTube video of. They made a video of it called This Is Water. And it's basically about just like it's okay. Like, people are going through stuff, and we can just be gracious towards them no matter what, even if we don't know what it is. And so I think a lot of people are going through hard times right now. And so how can we just be a little bit more forgiving and understanding and patient, you know, at the grocery store or on the highway or wherever.
Amen, amen, amen. Amazing, amazing. I'm so grateful to really treat. Okay, I'm going to cut my ending because it was because I can say it now. Unbelievable! What an unbelievable joy and gift to have these amazing leaders here sharing with us. Can everyone hear me here? Can someone, let me see, I'll get the heads up from Kathy. Everyone hear me? Yep. Okay, good. All right. We have about 15 minutes, a little less, before we wrap up, and it ends up that the three women on our panel are here and have. Can you hear me, Kathy? Kathy, no?
Yes, I was trying to see if there was a way I could pin all three of them. In
All right. We have a chance for, yeah. We have a chance for a short Q&A opportunity with our team here. So I'm going to invite you to put, if you have questions, put them in the chat. Don't raise your hand, please. Please put them in the chat. And because we have limited time, I'm going to be selective. Please don't take it the wrong way. In the spirit of Yom Kippur, in the spirit of Sadie's beautiful words of forgiveness and compassion, okay? We have short time because we have another session starting around 5:15. I want to respect that next session. But we have some of these women here. So please put your questions into the chat, and I'm going to make some selective things. About maybe another 30 seconds or so to put your questions in the chat. And I'm going to invite Sadie, Tracy, and Mandy if they feel comfortable. I mean, they can either just unmute themselves. That's fine. Maybe Kathy can do that. And if you want to share video, that's cool too. I know this was kind of at the moment. I didn't prepare them with it. So, all right. So let me see what kind of questions we have here. First of all, just some wonderful compliments here. Okay. All right, here we go. Oh, Steve Hamill, Gaval. All right. Okay, so I feel so we have basically so far. Any other questions we want to ask? All right, so we got two basically. All right, so I'm Sadie, Tracy, and Mandy, if you can hear. Okay. Oh, sorry, that was a great question too. Fantastic. All right, we'll start with Steve's question. Is there something about the media that has been done that annoys you? I think almost Sadie should take this first since it's her bailiwick. Sadie, can you hear us? Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Sadie also wanted to say she sadly just lost her father before Yom Kippur. I can't believe she's even on this call. We're deeply grateful and we're sending deepest condolences from our congregation. Okay, Sadie, Bakasha.
Thank you. Well, my husband and mom and brother all wanted to watch, so we wouldn't have missed it. Thank you all for your support. Okay, so the question is there anything that the media has done that annoys me?
Yeah.
How much time do we have? Tracy, I can see you laughing at me. Look, the media has very difficult jobs right now because newsrooms have been cut and cut and cut to the bone. And so fewer reporters are being asked to cover more. Like, the news isn't getting less, but there are fewer reporters. So I think they have a really difficult order. You know, I'll say something simple, which is that Mandy talks about this all the time in the press conferences. We need to watch data over like a 14-day period or longer to really see the trends of what's happening with this virus. And so it can be frustrating when you see daily, like highest day count ever or lowest count reported since June, just because we know that one day snapshot is not an accurate picture of what's going on in the state. So I do get frustrated with that sometimes, but I know that, you know, that's the news that day, so they have to report it. But that can be hard because, you know, we're trying to watch the whole trajectory.
Amen. Tracy also works in media connection too. And if you, Tracy or Mandy, want to add in, there's also other questions too, but Tracy or Mandy, you want to go ahead?
I would just, I think Sadie is 100% right about the hard job that the media has to do. And look, we want them asking hard questions, right? I mean, that's an important part of their role is to play that sort of check there and ask those questions. I think this is true not just of the media, but frankly of everyone. Like, as people, we want definitive answers. We want to know, like, this is what's happening and this is what it means and this is what I need to do and here are all the steps. And, you know, we're in a pandemic and we're learning, and they're just a lot of those definitive answers, particularly early on, just don't exist. And I think that's challenging both for the media to cover, and I think it's challenging for people, and it's challenging for everyone. And we just sort of have to lean into, as we talked about during the panel, that transparency as much as possible to really convey that if we know it, we're going to share it, and we're going to tell you what we don't know as well.
I'm going to give Mandy a shot if she has this one or another question. You're fine. Okay. All right. Let me ask this one. I think this is when it's kind of taking Dan Dembo's question and adjusting it. He says, how are the guidelines for social distancing and wearing a mask to be enforced in our society when some refuse to follow the directions? So I want to make it a little larger. How do you deal with the fact that you all are in positions, I've mentioned before, where some don't like the news, but there are actually some people who actively really disagree or are not doing what you would hope? This goes for all of you. How do you deal with that? Just on your own soul or on, job? Do you just accept that as part of the work? How do you react to the fact that there are people out there who just so disagree with what you're doing, don't follow? Would like to take that one.
I'll start. It's Mandy. Markova, everybody. You can't waste your energy on that. There's always going to be folks who are not going to, be on board with the decisions that are being made for a lot of different reasons. And so we focus on the folks that are, as well as helping them understand, because you can always expand the pie of people who are understanding. And I do spend a lot of time thinking about how the why of what we're doing. So, yes, it's frustrating, and they are against things before they even happen. So I will tell you, I get postcards at my house already about why vaccines are horrible and they should not be mandated when there's not even a COVID vaccine yet. So they're anticipating the badness, and it hasn't. You just have to put that in a space, continue the work to help. Just remember the vast majority of people are trying to do the right thing every single day, and that's the folks that we're working so hard for. And then if we pick off a few extra folks as we go along, all the better.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, awesome. Sadie or Tracy, anything else to add about that? No, not Sadie. Tracy?
I'll jump in also and say that I agree. I think most people are doing what they can. And also, I think the nature of being in communications or policy for so long, you come in knowing that there are going to be a certain number of people that you are not going to be able to reach, and that's not the best place to spend time and energy. It's really those folks who do want to hear and learn and be persuadable to that. We also have taken a pretty research-based approach to our messaging to really understand what it is that will help people not just know the facts about things, but also what will motivate this really significant behavior change that's being asked of all of us. And it's not easy all the time for me to be like, oh yeah, I got to have that mask with me. So we're doing our best to help support people and most of whom want to be doing the best that they can to keep themselves safe, their families safe, and their communities.
Amen. All right, we're going to have to wrap up here. We only have a chance for a few questions, but again, we are so grateful for your time on this holiest day of the year. We are so proud of you as leaders of our community and our congregation, and we are grateful for your service. And our prayer for you in this Yom Kippur is that, God gives you strength. You all are leading, and Sadie is sadly in mourning, just began mourning process. We pray that God gives you strength and love and support, and you should always know that your community is so behind you. We are in your corner. I'm not saying every single Jew. We know we have diverse community, so we have different opinions, but we're proud of you for leading and stepping forward and taking risks courageously to help us, make do tikkun olam. And just wish you, please God, you and your families, a Shana Tova, a good sealing, please God, in the book of life. And that's for everyone on this call. We're so grateful to all of you who participated. Please share this wonderful message you learned today. Take them to heart on this Yom Kippur. I gained a lot from it, Rabbi Jenny too. Our own children are going to watch this too. And I want to know how much you inspired us. So we're going to conclude now. Say thank you.
Yeah.
May it all have an good end to the fast soon. And starting at 5:15, just a few minutes, our next sessions of learning together. Okay, Gemar Chatima Tova, good sealing.